and activities. And then the quality of the whole association will be diminished. We saw this happen in ISKCON. So many devotees came, and there was no process to make sure that they were qualified. Srila Prabhupada wanted to have the university, just like we're constructing an online university of transcendental knowledge. Prabhupada wanted to have this university program in ISKCON, but the leaders didn't like it because they were political men. They weren't men of knowledge. They didn't understand that without good quality recruits, the whole thing would eventually become a failure. So they went for quantity instead of quality. Well, we have the opposite, the other orientation. Our goal is quality rather than quantity. We would rather have a small number of very qualified students than have a large number of less qualified students. So we're making degrees and tiers of quality. So someone who reaches the bhakta stage, the bhakta level, they're allowed to associate with our community intimately. But before anyone can reach a position of being in management or being involved in planning, then they have to complete a higher stage of study and a longer association with our devotees to make sure that they have the proper character. So the different levels are there. Bhakti Shastri 1, Bhakti Shastri 2, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, like that. And gradually, as someone becomes more qualified, they can accept initiations from the spiritual master. But we have to make sure that they're not going to fall down. We have to make sure that their understanding of devotional principles and processes is accurate. We have to make sure that their practice is good quality and that they're a good person, too. We don't want to admit people who may have some ulterior motive for being part of our association. So we screen them very carefully. All this means that we accept fewer disciples, but those disciples are of much higher quality than other groups. Similarly, to continue reading, a bona fide spiritual master has no business reading many books simply to show his proficiency or to get popularity by lecturing in different places. One should avoid all these things. It is also stated that a sannyasi should not be enthusiastic about constructing temples. We can see in the lives of various acharyas in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that they are not very enthusiastic about constructing temples. However, if somebody comes forward to offer some service, the same reluctant acharyas will encourage the building of costly temples by such servitors. For example, Rupa Goswami was offered a favor by Mahārāj Nimi, the commander-in-chief of Emperor Akbar, and Rupa Goswami instructed him to construct a large temple for Govindaji, which cost vast amounts of money. So a bona fide spiritual master should not personally take any responsibility for constructing temples. But if somebody has money and wants to spend it in the service of Krishna, an acharya like Rupa Goswami may utilize the devotee's money to construct a nice, costly temple for the service of the Lord. So this is our mood also. We don't want to get involved in complicated projects costing a lot of money and requiring so much time and effort for management. We would rather spend our time on chanting the holy name and consulting and advising people who are engaged in management. So if someone has management capability or talent, then he can certainly serve in this way. And we have no objection. But we ourselves should not get involved. When I say we, I mean the brahmanas. Brahmanas and sannyasis should maintain an advisory role in society, and others should do all the managerial tasks, kshatriyas and vaishyas, like that. If such money is utilized by unqualified spiritual masters for living comfortably in costly temples without actually doing any preaching work, this is not acceptable. In other words, a spiritual master needn't be very enthusiastic for constructing temple buildings simply in the name of so-called spiritual advancement. Rather, his first and foremost activity should be to preach. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj recommended that a spiritual master print books. If one has money, instead of constructing costly temples, one should spend his money for the publication of authorized books in different languages for propagating the Krishna consciousness movement. Of course, now books are passé. Nobody reads books anymore. So we would rather say that we would concentrate our resources on creating multimedia, these recordings, videos, online conferences, and so on. Nobody reads books anymore. They don't have time. The powers that be have made everyone so poor, turned them into slaves, and so they have no time for reading books or making their lives better. It's a rare person that will take the time to seriously study anything these days. So we have to reach people where they are, and the best way is by YouTube videos and like that. This is the best thing that we should do. Rather than building a big temple and then just sitting there and eating and sleeping, that's not very good. Rather, we should put all our energy into preaching. And somehow or other, Krishna will make everything else very nice for his devotees, but that shouldn't be our focus. We see in these big organizations that the head men live very opulently, more opulently than any householder, actually. Instead of just being a simple sannyasi and preaching, they become managers. And then they get caught up in all these affairs of money and power, politics and diplomacy. And we don't like this at all. We don't like this mood at all. Simply preach and let Krishna manage everything. And he'll send the people and resources that we need. We have faith in this because we've been living like this now since about 2001, 2002. And it's working out very nicely. So there's really no problem as long as we're preaching. Straightforwardness in ordinary dealings and equilibrium in loss and gain. There is a statement in the Padma Purana. Persons who are engaged in Krishna consciousness should never be disturbed by some material gain or loss. Even if there is some material loss, one should not be perturbed, but should always think of Krishna within himself. The purport is that every conditioned soul is always absorbed in thinking of materialistic activities. He has to free himself from such thoughts and transfer himself completely to Krishna consciousness. As we have already explained, the basic principle of Krishna consciousness is to always think of Krishna. One should not be disturbed in material loss, but rather should concentrate his mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord. A devotee should not be subjected to lamentation or illusion. There is a following statement in the Padma Purana. Within the heart of a person who is overpowered by lamentation or anger, there is no possibility of Krishna being manifested. So this is why the first instruction of Krishna in Bhagavad-gītā is, do not lament. Yeah, there's so many problems in the world, so many difficulties in life, so many ups and downs. But whatever happens, don't lament. Why? It's a complete waste of time and energy. Don't lament, don't be angry, don't desire, don't cling to material things, because all these things are going to be vanquished. It's all going to go away. So don't get attached to it. It's just temporary, and before long you're going to lose it. So Just be in this world and be attached to performing your duty in Krishna consciousness. That will lead to equilibrium in both gain and loss. Got some migrating birds here. The demigods. One should not neglect to offer due respect to the demigods. One may not be a devotee of the demigods, but that does not mean that he should be disrespectful towards them. For example, a Vaishnava is not a devotee of Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma, but he is duty-bound to offer all respect to such highly positioned demigods. According to Vaishnava philosophy, one should offer respect even to an ant. So then, what is there to speak of such exalted persons as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma? In the Padma Purana it is said, Krishna, or Hari, is the master